Hey everybody, welcome to Popular Geekery Bi-Weekly once again, the show where three geeks hang out and talk about new things, old things and cool things. Um, this episode, or this snippet almost, we're going to be talking about the Oculus Rift. Leonard, let's have some information.
Cool, yeah. So, big announcement yesterday from Oculus on the consumer version of the Rift, which is expected at the kind of first quarter of next year. So it's going to be long anticipated because since Valve threw their kind of hat into the ring with the Vive and have shown off some kind of awesome stuff, everyone was looking to Oculus, who obviously kind of started the resurgence of VR to see what they're up to. So it was their big announcement. They kept it fairly kind of consumer level. So, because obviously a lot of geeks tuned in, hoping to kind of see some numbers and some technical specs, but they kept it fairly straightforward, which was kind of frustrating for a lot of people. But yeah, they've announced the new consumer version. They dropped some news on kind of control device input, which was mixed reactions and some interesting stuff there, which we'll get into in a minute. And just kind of ongoing kind of games partners, and it seems like there's a lot of stuff going on. So.
Yes, so I saw some of the stuff. What interested me was they seem to release like images of the Xbox controller, but then there's another controller.
Yeah, that was the thing. It almost seemed like it's quite a sensible move in many ways, although it's kind of a controversial topic in the VR community. But they obviously announced the headset, and they brought out the headset. And it was a little awkward watching the video stream because it looked like they were expecting applause and the room was silent. I think most people know about the Oculus now, so they needed something impressive rather than just a kind of a new version. I think they had to impress geeks, and I think the geeks were just like, yeah, we're familiar with the Oculus. So it's a new and exciting thing to most of the people in the world, but to the people in the room, it was just like, oh, cool, what's next? But yeah, input was what people were expecting because with Valve's Vive, they've kind of, because I think Oculus frustrated them a lot with, after the Facebook buyout, they stole some of Valve's top people. I think Valve stepped up with their collaboration with HTC and went, oh, this is what we've got. We've got this controller. We don't need to be seated at all. We want you to move around and interact with stuff. Mm-hmm. So everyone was working well, what are Oculus? How are Oculus going to respond? Because they said seated experience. They didn't have any kind of control input devices. So people were expecting big things. And it kind of seemed like a bit of a troll's job for a start because their big announcement on input initially was that the Rift is going to be bundled with an Xbox One wireless controller for Windows. And so, like, on Twitter, all the VR forums, everyone was just like, what is this? Like, one of the main things that people have said from early on through VR development was if you put a VR headset on someone, if you give them a controller, they won't use the VR headset properly. They'll get used to looking forward and they'll start to navigate with a controller. So, I mean, it's obviously kind of contextual, so if you give something where someone like a first-person shooter with a controller, then they'll stop looking around. It's inevitable. But there's a lot of games you can use a controller for, so it kind of seemed like a bit of a dodgy move for a start. But kind of looking at it, there's some strong strategy behind it there.
See, the thing I found weird, like when I play the Oculus, if I'm using a controller, that's when I get the motion sickness. Because as soon as I use the controller to move, independent of my head movement, my stomach rolls. Whereas with a keyboard and mouse, it didn't seem quite as bad, and obviously, without any kind of controller, or with with the Move controllers or whatever, I can't remember what they're called. The ones that you have in the hands.
Yeah, I think
the
Hydra.
The Hydra, that's the one. Yeah, it's obviously a lot better. But it seems like a strange move to me too. But then, well,
that's the thing. I think everyone was expecting a big, nice kind of input device, but there's such a range of games, and motion sickness is very kind of contextual. Like with a first-person shooter, if you're running around, then you're prone to motion sickness. I mean, a lot of motion sickness early on was to do with just the quality of the headsets, the frame rates, a lot of general mistakes. So just the improvements in the headset technology has helped reduce motion sickness.
Sure.
So, and then the rest of the battle is kind of within design. So controllers are perfect for kind of cockpit-style games where you're flying around in a spaceship because you're familiar with the controls.
Yeah.
And especially bundling an Xbox controller is quite wise because it's like if you play a PlayStation and then jump to an Xbox and it says press X on the screen, you press the wrong button because you're used to kind of different mapping. So giving people a controller they know means that if you've got a prompt come up in VR, you don't have to worry about looking at your controller to find the button. You know where it is. You can learn it. It's a known quantity. So that saves a lot of frustration there. And there's a lot of things as well, like there's people making third-person kind of platform-style games. So the controller's flexible. It's kind of, people know how to design for controllers. They just have to kind of meet that bridge in the middle. So you can't have a load of first-person shooters with people running around with controllers in VR, but you can have racing games and cockpit games. And what they seem to do with the short video that they showed, short because it crashed by the looks of it, was during the presentation, didn't bother replaying it, was that they have some kind of cinema mode. So you can be sat kind of on a virtual sofa in a virtual living room with your controller, be playing a game on a massive TV. Which presumably looks 3D, and I think I was reading somewhere earlier today. They're saying it's like an IMAX screen. Essentially, you'll perceive it to be the size of an IMAX screen. And the cool stuff with that, which again was a kind of speculation, but seems like a feasible thing to do, is you could essentially, if you're playing multiplayer games, you could be sat on a virtual couch next to your friend, so you could be playing games on the same TV, multiplayer, but you see your screen, they see their screen, but they're still sat next to you, so you can still turn around and look at them and kind of chat with them in virtual reality. So you've got this kind of social aspect kind of to traditional gaming, but in a virtual world. So like the VR headset alone would be awesome just for using for that, not for full kind of interactive VR experiences. So bundling the controller strategically is like, it's accessible, it's a nice centralized kind of control method. So yeah, it was frustrating at first, and there was seeing some reactions were interesting. But yeah, I think it's quite a wise move, really.
Yeah, see, I watched some of the videos. Like a couple of the gaming websites released some videos of some of the games that they also released or announced. Sorry, with the E3 release footage, but they all seem to be third-person videos, which was quite confusing.
Yeah, there's a lot of third-person games. I think it seems to be. I'm not sure why. There's first-person games. There's problems with motion sickness. It seems to be different if you're tracking an object.
Right.
So, I'm thinking with kind of traditional games, Mirror's Edge. One of the big problems that they solved motion sickness with just in Mirror's Edge was by putting that dot in the middle of the screen. People have spoken with VR about helping solve motion sickness by putting a virtual nose on the screen. I think that.
Virtual nose?
Yeah, because obviously when you're live, you look around, you've got this nose attached to your face. In VR, you've just got these black circles, you haven't got a fixed point of reference.
Right, okay.
So that's a potential one. So maybe having a fixed character on the screen gives you that point of focus that kind of gives your brain some leeway in terms of motion sickness. So
I guess it makes sense. I'd never really thought about it, because your automatic reaction when you look at VR is that you're going to be there, you're going to be behind the eyes.
Yeah.
I guess a third-person thing would work. You'd just be like sitting behind the character as it's running around.
Yeah.
But it's still, I guess, going to be a different experience.
Yeah, because you'd have the ability to kind of look around and see things. I think it's quite exciting. It's the idea of like strategy games for virtual reality. So you've got a battlefield, you can look around and like look things and kind of zoom into battlefield level and check the kind of the terrain.
Like playing Warhammer on a table, but being like moving around. And
in real time, you can go down and direct troops and kind of zoom back out and see the overview and stuff.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah. Because like imagine like you get in a battle and something kicks off, and then you could kind of go, right, I'm going to go down and possess this guy on the machine gun. So you're on the machine gun, you take people out, and you're like, okay, right, things are quite here. Zoom out, go into a tank elsewhere, but be able to kind of almost like go from tabletop to first person and out again.
Nice. What's your thoughts, Leonard, about around like the competitive stuff coming out now? So you've got the Vive or the Vive or whatever they call it.
Yeah, that's an amazing bit of kit.
Where is Oculus now? Because obviously when they first started sending out developer kits, they were the only one on the market, and then some really random ones came out. Those big like dome things, and everyone kind of went. But then you've got the Vive, you've got the Valve one, you've got a couple of others that genuinely look like they're pretty good. And you tried them, right? At Southwest.
Yeah, I've tried like the Vive, which is Vive. I think it's Vive. It's pronounced, but people will guess. Yeah, so yeah, there's the Vive, which is really good. Low latency tracking is awesome. You can walk around a room. It's got the chaperone system, so if you walk up to a wall, you've got a grid in the virtual space, and you know there's something there. You can kind of touch this grid, and there's a real wall, which is really cool. Yeah, the control method's spot on. You can kind of see the controllers. The only downside of that is that obviously you're tethered, so you've got like a giant cable going out to your system. But yeah, that's really strong. The Sony Morpheus looks excellent. Yeah, they've got the Move controllers to do stuff there, and obviously got the traditional controllers on PlayStation, so that'll be excellent. And there's a lot of other, smaller headsets coming up. Like it's on Kickstarter at the moment. There's the Fove, which is a head-mount display with eye tracking built in, so it can tell where you're looking, so you can do kind of rendering kind of distances and stuff, so you can get the depth of field in there. You can kind of build analytics into stuff. You can get kind of human interaction. So if you're doing something like an RPG, and you kind of go up to an NPC and have a discussion with them. If they're trying to intimidate you and like you're looking away and your eye contact's bad, you could kind of have an algorithm there that senses your
direction.
Yeah. So if someone's intimidating you, because virtual reality is you're very present in a good experience, you do start to react. No matter how much you know you're in a false environment, you do start to react to these things. So if you're intimidated by an NPC for any reason, then they can detect that. So with eye movement, that's perfect. I mean, you can do a certain amount with head movement, but yeah, the eye stuff really seals it up. And then for social interactions and stuff. So, and then you've obviously got things like Gear VR for the Samsung phones. You're starting to get these mobile experiences. So there's a lot out there. I think Oculus are definitely going to be kind of leading the charge in a lot of ways. And it'll be interesting to see with this partnership with Microsoft, whether that leads on to Oculus on the Xbox One. So,
as a competition for the Morpheus on the PlayStation.
Yeah, because Microsoft's obviously working on HoloLens, which is augmented reality. But that's, as cool as it is, it seems to be they seem to be balancing it equally between potentials for kind of consumer entertainment purposes and for business purposes. So I'm not sure whether they've got some plans there, but it's not virtual reality. Like VR can do a lot more, so you might see that kind of thing there. But in terms of how they...
Sorry, go on, Leonard.
I was going to say, going back to a question, it's like in terms of how they stack up in the potential competition, Valve, if they meet their deadline, which they should do because they're working with HTC who are used to shipping hardware, if they meet that deadline, they're going to be out first with a very good headset and an excellent tracking solution. They've got the Steam platform behind them for distributing content. There's already things in the works, obviously. So if Valve have got strong release content, then they've got the consumer base already there with Steam users and the kind of the PC platform to really take advantage of it and grab a stronghold early on.
Yeah, because the thing is, for me, like as a consumer, when I first saw the Oculus Rift come out, I was pretty blown away by it. But then when Morpheus was announced, my first thought was like, well, I've got PS4.
Yeah.
I might just go for that. But then again, there's always the fear that it's going to turn into the Kinect. And I know it's not the same technology and it's not the same thing, but you know what I mean, like turn into a
novelty.
A novelty, yeah, exactly, just a gimmick.
I think that's the thing, like the tech's getting better now. Because remember when like the first Wii came out and there was, I can't remember what the game was, like Red something or other, and it had the trailers where you got the gun and the sword and it showed all this tracking stuff.
Yeah.
Like, oh, cool. But then you play it and it's just ropey, it's got preset animations, nothing tracks, it's not tracking one-to-one. Yeah. Those kind of experiences, like that's what you hoped for and it didn't deliver. Whereas the tracking, especially on something like the Vive, is spot on. You could have those experiences. And with the Morpheus, having had it go on the Morpheus, it's what you'd hope. You're kind of holding these controllers, like someone hands you a telephone, you hold your controller out and grab the telephone and hold it to your ear. You're there. There's no noticeable latency. It doesn't break the presence. And what they can achieve on the PlayStation 4 with like Move controllers essentially and the headset is amazing. And when they start to build up those kind of experiences, there's going to be a lot of really cool stuff that people can play. And as long as the content keeps coming and evolving, then I think people will love it. So it'll only become stale and and kind of stumble if that content dries up.
Yeah, makes sense. And that's the thing. It's always about the developers, isn't it? It's always about the people making the content for the stuff. So
Yeah.
the Kinect died because people were well behind it at the beginning, and then like kind of died off. Doesn't really work. You know,
Yeah.
you've got those guys doing like the Call of Duty games or I think it was I can't remember now, but there was a game where the guy was, you know, like doing all his loadouts with his guns at one of the E3 conferences, and you're like, well, that looks pretty sweet, and then it just never happened.
Yeah.
Game never happened. Just like, and that's,
but we did get dancing stormtroopers.
We did, and that's the thing. Like you guys, well, David at least, or Sarah at least, you played Dance Central at my house. That was genuinely a fun game.
Yeah.
And that's what it did well. It did track you well, but past that, it was just a like dance. I mean, even the UFC game, I got that being really excited, thinking, you know, UFC
the gym, the virtual gym.
The virtual trainer thing, and it was awful. I mean, it couldn't even pick me up doing push-ups. Like, literally, you'd be doing push-ups, and you'd do 5, and it'd be like, you've done 1. And you'd be like, no, I've done 5.
And when it's a fitness-based thing,
yeah.
It's like, you've done 1, I am knackered, and you told me I failed. And I've done 25 exercise movements.
Exactly, yeah. And then this is the thing with the HoloLens that worries me, is that when you look at, if you look at the HoloLens marketing material versus the Kinect marketing material, it looks very similar. It makes the same claims. It's superimposing things that you would supposedly be able to see. But then when you listen or read about people's actual reactions to the HoloLens as it is now, they're saying, sure, it's augmented reality, but it's augmented reality in a box about that big in front of your face. Look outside of that box, and nothing's there. And that's like, just doesn't sound like it's supposed to be, and how they're marketing it.
Yeah, and that's the thing with VR, though. It's everything that you've seen so far. You've lived up to, it's pretty much lived up to the hype. Even the stuff, the early stuff you know is bad, you try it, and you're like, this is awesome. And actually, speaking of headsets, one of my kind of favourite stories from about the kind of the power of VR. When I was in kind of LA, I got a chance to try the Vive with Weaver, who do an experience called, I think it was Into the Blue, where you put on the headset, the Vive headset, you've got the controllers, and you're basically on a sunken ship. Obviously under the sea, as sunken ships generally are. And there's just fish swimming around. You can kind of explore things. You can kind of swish your hands through the water, so you can kind of see the controllers ghosted. And you've got, they had it set up in a room, so you could walk around, you could walk to the railing and look over it. And eventually this big whale kind of swam in and like stopped in front of you, and you kind of stood around its eye. And you can take a few steps just looking around its eye. And because you've got that range of motion and that freedom and that confidence knowing that like you can see that a real world's there, like the presence just clicks completely. You feel like you're there. It's amazing. And the guy who tried it before me in the queue was talking about kind of augmented reality versus virtual reality, and he was kind of like, "Oh, virtual reality is rubbish." And so I was trying to engage him in conversation. And was just like, "Why do you think that? Have you tried this and have you tried that?" And he was spouting off like, "Oh, I've had my career was doing this and doing that." And he had some impressive stuff kind of that he's achieved, and he was like, "Oh, augmented reality is the way to go. It's like everyone's going to use augmented reality. You'll buy your augmented reality setup, and that'll be able to do all your virtual reality stuff." And he was basically, his exact words were, "I only come to these demos to tell people how shit VR is and how shit their demos are." And
well, he did it taken outside and kicking in the neck, then, didn't he?
Well, he put the headset on, did the demo, came out. And he was just like, that was amazing. He was
really? What? Straight turnaround?
Yeah, he was just mind blown, just kind of standing there. He had that kind of stare like that, like trying to adjust to being back in real life. It was just like, yeah, that was great. He didn't have a bad word to say about it.
Nice.
So, yeah.
That's the thing, you're right, it totally lives up. Like, I've just had a games tournament here, and we had Grid Autosport, which is, not a particularly new game, but it had Oculus support. So we had an Oculus DK2, Grid Auto support, GT steering wheel. It was awesome. Just so people were doing time trials as like a competition thing, and just full immersion. And you're driving along. Like I stacked it into the side of the track because I was driving badly, and then you get back on the track and you start driving, and you look to your left and there's no door on the car, and I was like, there's no door smash. It's so good.
Yeah, I tell you what was interesting experience with, I think it was a Assetto Corsa, which is like a simulation kind of racing game. If you've got your camera set up in the right place, then you can, when you start the game, you're sat in the driver's seat. If you get up out of your chair and take a step to the left, which is left-hand drive, you're outside your car, stood up, and you're stood next to a car. So it's just, you kind of have to step through the door, so it's not perfect, but it's this weird, like you do get a sense of presence from being able to see the car and see the size of it.
And it following you around.
Yeah, it's just brilliant. Yeah, it's amazing. Although it's a bit weird if you hang your head out the door as you're driving. That'd be a bit noisy. Yeah.
Yeah, someone stood next to you going.
Yeah. Well, the first time I played the DK2 at Leonard's, and I've probably told you this story, but we did the demo. I don't know what it's called, Leonard. You probably, but with where you're sat in a room and you've got a desk, and it's to demo the head tracking, so you can look around the desk. Yeah, no, it wasn't Don't Let Go. It was the one with where you end up on the steel girder at the end. Sightline.
Yeah, Sightline, the chair, yeah.
So you go through this demo, and like there's a desk in front of you, and there's a plant, and then as soon as you look across at the table at something over here, when you go back, something's changed, and then you're like, oh, things are changing, and then you look behind you, and you go back, and you're in a street, and you're no longer in an office with a desk. And anyway, long story short, you end up you're sitting on a chair in the game anyway. You end up on a steel girder, balancing like this on a skyscraper of just steel girders, and then without me knowing, Leonard had a desk fan and hadn't mentioned it to anybody. And so, of course, you're in there, you're completely immersed, you've got the headphones on. He can see what you're doing with the monitor. As soon as like, I'm looking around, I'm in space, hovering above the Earth or whatever the hell was happening. I turn around, I'm on a steel girder, he clicks the fan on, I get cold air in my face. It was the freakiest thing ever.
Yeah, it's great. That's inspired by trying out one of the experiences that the Ignition guys in London did, where you've got like the plank of, like you have to walk across a plank between two buildings. So like you've got two squares of wood and then a plank kind of between them on the floor. So you're not in any danger. It's not a very big plank of wood. But they start you at one side, and then so you put on the headset, and they had a connectors to track your kind of positions as you're walking over it. And yeah, so you'd be in the VR, it walked you across a room, and then this door opened, and they had like a massive fan. It was like proper industrial size, so you could feel the wind blowing. And even though you know you're in VR, it's just like that, having that extra sense kind of triggered. Your brain kind of goes, okay, you know you're safe, but all these signs say that you might not be, so you should be worried.
Didn't one guy stack it into a wall by thinking he could jump the last bit?
Yeah, I think one of the first people to try it out. Yeah, try to jump because there's these metal kind of poles hanging out. And so it looks like you can grab them. So you want to grab them when you're kind of nearly there. It's your instinct. And I think he tried to grab it, and it was a bit too close to the wall, and he didn't do too well. But that's the joy of the pioneering.
And that's the thing. Like when I was driving in that game earlier, and I noticed there was no car door, oddly my first reaction was to do that and put my arm out the window.
Yeah.
But then I then had to realise that in the real world, I knew that when I put the Rift on, someone was stood there, so I was probably about to go.
Awkward crotch grab.
Yeah, exactly. Like I'm just going to feel this guy up for a second.
Yeah.
I'm a gravity beanbag.
I don't know. I mean, it's one of those things that I really do like the Oculus, and I really like the idea of VR. I just don't know how feasible it is as a consumer product yet. Now, looking at the images of Oculus and what they've released for the consumer model, it looks awesome. Having the headset, like the headphones built in, looks super slick. It's going to be quite expensive, but like I just don't know if it's something I'd ever buy myself.
I think unless you've got.
Well, that's my biggest question. I think is how much is it going to cost?
That's the thing. They didn't mention anything, but what we do know is that they want it to be as affordable as possible. Part of the news that came when Facebook bought them is that Facebook said, we want you to sell these at cost, with the idea of generating a VR consumer base that they can obviously then kind of build a platform and kind of take advantage of. So they want it to be cheap. They want it to be affordable as possible. So, yeah, it'd be interesting to see how they price things. But I think the general rule with consumer like electronics is that I think about £180 kind of in the British market, are about $200. That's the kind of price area where people will just kind of buy something without thinking too much about it.
Yeah, it makes sense.
So there's going to be quite a price difference. It's not going to be a fixed. Because with a lot of stuff now, you know, like over there, how much is a PlayStation 4 game? $39.99.
Yeah, it depends where you buy it. Between 40 and 50 quid, essentially.
Right. So here, the standard retail price is $59.99.
Well, it depends where you buy it, as always. If you buy a game on Amazon,
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. The standard retail is $59.99. That's what I'm saying. So what I'm saying is, the recommended retail price is the same. So the company's bottom line is getting the same amount of money, allowing for exchange rate. Do you see what I mean? So like if something was £180, you're looking at that would be more like $3.25.
Yeah,
maybe, if you were going for a vertical, split.
Yeah, I think with those numbers, when I kind of read them, well, I remembered about £180. Obviously, the $200 value is probably without tax, whereas the £180 is with kind of UK tax. So obviously they don't have tax on there.
Let me do a quick currency conversion because I might have got that completely around my neck.
But what I was going to say, kind of leading on, we're talking about how it's going to take off. It comes on. We haven't discussed the Oculus Touch kind of half moon controllers that they announced as well, which they kind of saved till the end. It did seem like a troll job for all the people who were expecting kind of input devices when they announced the Xbox controller. It was good to see them pull something out, but they didn't announce whether it was going to. With the Xbox controllers, they're like, this is going to be bundled with the Oculus. So it implies that the input device isn't going to launch at the same time. It'll launch soon after, but then you start to get that kind of price difference where are people going to buy the controllers? Because it doesn't matter if they're great controllers, but if it's another relevant cost on top of things, then are people going to fork out to buy them to play these other games, which might have less content because it's a different kind of game. You need space to play it. So
right. Yeah. So it works out $280.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the price you're looking at, probably before tax. So you're probably looking at about $286.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not bad. But the trouble with a lot of people that would probably be in the same situation as me is the PC. You need a decent PC to run it well. I don't have that.
Probably a whole new subject, but Windows 10 should be out before the Oculus launches. And with Windows 10 there'll be DirectX 12, and I'm hearing they're saying it's just doing amazing things. I can't remember the exact numbers, so forgive me if I'm wrong, but in some things they said they got up to 200-300% more frames per second on the jump between DirectX 11 and DirectX 12. So suddenly all these computers that couldn't run things at a decent enough speed to be able to deliver a good experience for Oculus, because obviously Oculus, they want very bare minimum 60 frames a second, ideally 90 frames a second, obviously aiming up for 120 seconds, considering most people just run games at 25, 30 frames. That's quite a jump. So DirectX 12 will mean that a lot of people's computers that were out of the running suddenly kind of get a new lease of life. So the launch about kind of later on means that people don't have to necessarily update their PC hardware to be able to get on board and start playing games with a decent kind of response. So But
I still have to get one.
First thing I think with the partnership with Microsoft and with if you see the Oculus on Xbox One and with PlayStation Morpheus, I think the Morpheus is going to be kind of a central hub for a lot of people getting on board. Because it's accessible and they've got the network stuff there, and it'd be great to be able to dive in with friends and play.
Yeah, exactly, and it'll have the same benefits as PS4 games in that you don't have to buy a graphics card when something new comes out or doesn't go out of date. It just runs.
Yeah. Plus, the benefit of a PlayStation is PCs you generally have at a desk. PlayStations usually have in front of TVs. TVs have more space in front of them, so you can play those stand-up games with the controllers. Whereas the downside of the Oculus if they're using a tracking, because they've got the tracking camera still. They haven't done anything special. But that means you've got a limited field of view, which means you have to have it placed further away, and it's more awkward then to set it up so you can use the controllers if they're tracking space and
Sure.
to stand up and do stuff and to rearrange things. Whereas it's generally easy for most people with a PlayStation to just stand up from their sofas, move a coffee table. So, yeah.
But the benefit of the Oculus is that you're going to have so much more development going on for it, because it's going to be completely open for people to just mess around with and put a game on Steam.
But what
and they're going to throw a lot at it because Microsoft are losing in the console race, right?
Mm. Well, so yeah, they are going to throw a lot at it. That was part of the big news, and like, it'd be interesting to see kind of how they announce stuff and how they divide it up. But they've said they've got a 10 million pot to fund game development.
Wow.
So just to fund content, that's $10 million just to throw out to various projects, fund indies. So anyone who's got an innovative idea for virtual reality and wants to help kind of push those boundaries and prove they can do it, will get a chunk of funds to do that. So that could seed some very good content.
Indeed. Yeah, I mean, I'll.
Yeah.
And actually, interesting. I don't know what the terms of agreement behind taking that would be, but if you could achieve, if they would give you funding, then are you locked into a certain amount of time of exclusivity to Oculus? Could they fund $10 million worth of content, completely dry up the development well for people doing stuff for Vive because they've got that funding, and then so that doesn't take off and stagnates a little, Oculus comes out, all the excellent content, everything launches, and they can just swoop in there and just that
doesn't sound like something Microsoft would do.
Well, not Microsoft, no. But they're only collaborating with Microsoft. Remember, Facebook are the big money behind them, so...
Yeah, true.
Facebook are perfectly ethical. They wouldn't do anything like that. It's good. There's big money and a lot of strategy. It's taken that crown early on. It's a big battle with lots of big companies, and they're the two squaring off. So, but I think either way, both of them are going to be great products. I think it just comes down to content.
Sure.
Well, like anything, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, there's nothing actually wrong with a Kinect and how a Kinect works, but
there's nothing for it.
No. And the stuff that was rushed to get it out so that people could, stand around the TV and be dancing stormtroopers around Christmas.
Yeah. Kinect promised a lot that it couldn't quite deliver. I've not tried the Kinect 2 yet, but I don't know when I started developing stuff with the Kinect that I realised how ropey it is. But a great bit of kit. Just it doesn't quite deliver in the entertainment stakes as it should do.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's a whole nother conversation. So I think we've covered a lot of VR stuff. And
yes.
Yeah, I think it was a good summary of of what's happening with Oculus and in the VR field generally, really. So
yeah, a lot of exciting stuff happening. It's all kicking off, and before you know it, everyone's going to be stuck with headsets.
I might be able to try it one day.
Yeah.
Because I have had zero experience with any VR, apart from the things that came out in the early 90s, which gave me a headache and I couldn't see anything, because I'm a half-blind git.
That's the benefit of working in a games company as well, is that, I've got the technology around me most of the time, so I just get to try it out.
Yeah, and I'm just a massive geek who likes to get his hands dirty.
Nice. All right, awesome. Well, let's wrap it up there.
Sure.
Okay.
Thanks for watching, whoever you are, and stick a comment in the comment section below. We'd love some feedback. We're new to this, but we're going to put some time into it. So let's.
We're learning.
Yeah. Thumbs ups and likes and all that.
Yeah. Cool. Thanks, guys.
All right.